This first 9 to 10 block we set up for talking about documentation, go over the changes that happened during the last cycle and how we want to handle docs going forward. So Miguel, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so what I did in the Etherpad is in the first bullet I posted the new mission statement that the docs team is written for itself. And actually there was a session earlier this week where the technical council helped them to envision what's a successful future 1 year down the road. So if you read that mission statement, essentially it boils down that they are going to be in an enabling position. They are going to be providing tools. They are going to be providing advising. They are going to be provided processes. But really, from now on, the responsibility of documentation is really up to us. The current status is that most of the documents have already migrated to the. They are either in the Neutron repo or they are in the Neutron lib repo. And the difference is that in the Neutron lib repo we have all the API definitions, correct?
API reference.
API reference. Yeah. That's what we have in the Neutron lib repo, and the rest of the documents are in the Neutron repo under docs. And there we have the Neutron guide, the networking guide. We have all the ref, which was already there. What else we have there?
It's an installation guide.
What? The installation guide.
And in addition to the Neutron client repo, we have a CLI reference.
Yeah. So really, what we have to decide here today is how we are going to handle documents going forward, and knowing that the responsibility of those documents are really ours now. So do we want to keep the doc impact flag? We don't need that.
At this point, I think you can combine the batch and the doc content. So, sorry, the code or whatever contribution you're making and the documentation contribution, most likely in the content of the same patch. Right?
Yeah. That's personally where I lean towards.
As general recommendation anyway.
Yeah.
And there are always exceptions.
The general approach should be more or less what we do for the unit test. If you write code, you need to provide testing, and if that code requires documentation, it should come with its documentation in the same patch set. So that's pretty much what it boils down to.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's like no-brainer. Yeah.
So retire the doc impact.
Yeah.
You can, in theory, still sometimes need it. Like if you, I don't know, there's some reason to split, but on an exceptional basis.
Yeah, I was thinking
maybe you can read something
split it,
but need to document it in some Neutron.
Oh yeah,
in this case.
Yeah, if it requires.
What case is that?
Like you commit it in Neutron Leap, but documentation lives in Neutron,
right,
or vice versa.
Right. Yeah, right. Let's say the API ref.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean the doc impact ends up like triggering a workflow where a new launchpad bug is created. I don't know. I mean,
we just use depends on at that point to depend on a cross repo.
Yeah. I mean, I think the doc impact flag was used because typically, like, at least in the beginning, the doc people and and whoever was contributing code were somewhat separate entities. But now, if we have a wider team of folks all focused on a specific project and a specific component, I don't know. I mean, yeah, we could keep it, but I don't see that.
What does it mean? Like we keep it? Like is it hard? Is it some maintenance?
No.
Work? No.
Well, I mean, say a new contributor comes along, I mean, what is the general direction, guidance that we give?
The trainer will provide documentation in the same fashion. And then if they will ask, oh, I can't because this is the other repo, then we can figure it out. Not sure whether we even have those cases. Could be.
Yeah, I think we're going to have those cases in all the cases where we expand the API on the Neutron side, and then we need to write the API ref on the Neutron. So at least in that case, it's going to have that.
Even then, I don't know if we need doc impact because right away, just in the review, we could say, propose the patch, and then once it's up, let it go.
Yeah, I lean towards just dropping the doc impact.
Dropping use of it.
Well, then we'll.
So who's going to update the contributor guide?
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. We should agree.
And the question is, who is going next? Right? Who has this thing?
I'll do it. Okay. I'll volunteer to do it.
Well, as PTL, you should learn to delegate. First, PTL 101, delegate.
Yeah,
all right. Very good.
So should we
So
add
you should delegate to Kevin.
action items under each section?
Okay. So, Akihiro, you want to talk about what we have? I think you posted a few things that still need to be done, right? Is that from the migration point of view?
Yeah. Ryan, one thing is the future of the documentation of the Stadium project. So previously we have all networking related documents in the networking guide. So now it exists in Neutron repo. So for example, firewall service as something, or what is the suggested way that we suggest them to update the networking guide, or do they have their own documentation in their repository? From the operator or user's view, I think it is better to have a single entry point in the networking guide. But we can add a link to the individual Stadium project.
But each Stadium project, as of today, they already have their documentation hosted in their repo, right?
They do.
And you still will have it to just link.
Right. And the link, in some cases, is already available.
Like firewall as a service has networking guide entries, right? And that ended up getting moved into the main repo. And he was asking, what do we do?
Documentation team at first assumed all project has admin guide or user guide. In Neutron case, we have a single networking guide, so that now it is not a requirement. For example, Neutron firewall service admin is not a requirement. I think we can. I think each project can decide the direction. If they want to maintain their document in their repo, so that we just suggest other useful link to the networking guide or other document. For example, like install
PHP dynamic.
So I think we can let that Stadium project make that decision. For example, that's
some collection link is important.
okay.
So what was the decision there? Just leaves it for now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay to keep the current one, and if they don't have any link with the Neutron lab documentation. I think it is better to add some link
to an external.
Their lab to document of individual project.
Okay.
There are some remaining to do. I think that
Is that something that you plan to accomplish, or is that something you're proposing someone else does? For the to-dos that you posted there?
Yeah.
And the reason I'm asking is that you have been very busy in documentation. So is the purpose of this saying I'm going to do this, or I'm asking for help to?
I have to ask. There are some remaining to do that I have to have someone help to do these to do. One thing is admin guide and the networking guide. Previously, in the OpenStack manual repo, there are two documentation on networking side, on networking, admin guide and networking guide. But now we have networking guide as /admin admin path, and so that there is no good place to play a good place for the admin guide. So that now we have these content under the archive directory. So we need to move them to the networking guide. We need to check the contents carefully and move them into the networking guide.
So what you're saying is that in the way that we have it right now in the repo, it doesn't much sense. So we need to extract content from the admin guy and find out its correct place in the networking guide.
I'm adding with some link.
You're talking about the stuff that's under the archive folder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a folder out there right now that has some documents in it that are under our doc. Some folder that has the archive. I think he's talking about merging that content back up into the tree, into the doc tree. I can help out with that if you don't have the time.
No, I added some link to the.
So where is this archive?
Yeah, I added the link
in
to
the
this about line 68.
So one question I had, and I wasn't sure I was able, I wasn't able to find the answer, is that by keeping a separate doc repo, that was on a different release model because it was, milestone with cycle with trailing type. I can't remember the actual name of the name of the release model, but that meant that you could cut the release but still have some sort of grace period in which you can make contribution. And then, and only then, cut the release in which you're making changes, related changes for. So I think the release model is called trail. Hang on, let me check. Anyhow, my point is that now that we are, we're contributing documentation to in the same repo where the code exists, and that has a specific release model, like cycle with milestones. we are no longer allowed to kind of like defer certain documentation contributions right after the release is out.
Okay.
Which means that when you get into feature freeze, you know, almost, you know, you have to have documentation prepared as well. You can't really defer documentation up to that.
Right, right.
After the release.
And we're going to require them as part of the patch anyway, right?
Yeah, but
Feature.
again, what we've been operating up until now is okay. There is, you know, there is time to polish things up and, you know, clean up the documentation, because typically, like, cleaning up the documentation may take time. So even though you may have developed like a bulk of the documentation, you still want to make sure that, you know, things make sense and
Bullets are aligned.
right, stuff like that. And once you got the release, you're sort of like unable to do that, at least unless you end up like obviously backporting and impacting it.
We need a different policy for the documentation. Previously, a OpenStack-Minor docs project had a different time to have stable branch. If I remember correctly, it was 3 weeks or 4 weeks after the release. So that I think we should accept updating documentation, the master, and if the content is correct for stable branches, we can allow backports to stable branch.
Yeah, the release model is called cycle trailing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
So we just have to backport
Yeah, I think we have to backport.
docs changes.
But we can, if I recall, we can't backport API ref changes, right? Right? So like if we have an issue with the API reference in a pipe, we can't, there's no way for us to go back and fix that right now, is there? Or is there? I don't think we get where that documentation.
Why is it?
I think the reference is different different situation. Now, API reference is generated from the master branch only.
So if someone goes to pipe API reference and they click it, they're going to get the contents of the master. Is that correct? So you may have stuff in there that's not even in pipe.
It's correct up now.
Okay.
It is about the API reference. Since the documentation team thinks the second phase of doc migration the API reference or release nodes, but it hasn't happened yet.
It's the regular docs are okay to backport them.
Yeah. So for the API ref, what's the next step? Do we need to talk to the docs team?
I don't know now.
Okay, so we need to leave to do there to settle that with it.
I think that just we can do is follow the documentation team.
I mean, my understanding was that the API references are not the documentation website. You can go from one release to another. So you can choose to see the compute API for the Pike release, or you can choose to see the ironic API for the Metaka release.
You can't.
You cannot.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure I understand what the issue is with.
So whatever what you're saying is whatever the latest API ref document, that's it.
Published one.
That published, that's it. Yeah.
Which, I mean, should always be the master one. Because, I mean, in theory, you don't make backward incompatible changes. And whether your API is migration or not, you have a mechanism to advertise how your API is evolving. So the API documentation should always be up to date and be as comprehensive as it can be.
Per much.
And you look at the master branch.
Yeah.
I agree with you, but there's still one issue, which is that you will be documenting sometimes in master and publishing it things that don't exist yet. So it's true that there will be depending on an API extension, so people shouldn't be trying to use them if the extension is not advertised by the server, but it's kind of noise.
So what do you mean by documenting something that doesn't exist yet? Something that doesn't have an implementation yet?
Yes.
Well, I mean, you could get away with that by adding notes and say, look, this is work in progress, or I guess there was an example with the BGP VPN project where that happened. We can make the decision on a case-by-case basis, but I think the problem that we were bringing up right now was about whether certain contributions need to be, backported. The documentation contributions need to be backported for API everything. And I think the answer would be no, because you try to keep all the documentation on your API as comprehensive as it can be, and outline all the possible, variances of your API depending on whether you migration or like extension based and so on.
So then we don't have an issue there.
I don't think we do.
Yeah.
As long as we're diligent on the code reviews.
Right. Again, it boils down to enforcing rules in the code review cycle.
I mean, in theory, we could for instance, for each API feature, could label that we could, for instance, in the documentation add that particular feature was added in a particular release cycle. But we do have actually another place where we end up capturing the feature metrics in the Neutron repo, like that feature classification matrix.
Yeah,
and that is obviously versioned by, that is branched. Right? You can make different contributions depending on which branch you are, and from there you can potentially, as a reader, could understand where a certain feature has been, which release cycle that feature is being contributed. But it's kind of like you gotta go through hoops in order to figure that out. I don't know whether it's something that might be worth doing, but if
we decide that, maybe we have to give a prominent clarification in the API in the API reference that we should.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, I don't think it's such a good idea either, because in the end you have the release notes that have feature sections, and you can go to the release notes to see when a specific feature has been added. I mean,
okay.
I don't see that like a burning desire to address.
Yeah. I agree.
People complain when there's skill on your name.
Yeah. So okay. For me.
So and we also need to verify the bike guides.
There is nothing to add for me.
Okay, all right, very good.
Just we need to do. There is a mail call for verifying release.
Okay, very good. I have a point here, and that is we need a formal liaison with the documentation team. I was playing that role, but as I was reminded by Armando earlier and Mark earlier today, I need to delegate. So I'm asking someone to step into that role. you are doing documentation work anyways.
What are you putting me for?
So I know I was thinking of you.
That's how volunteering works.
What does that involve? Just syncing up with them?
Sync up with them. I go to their meetings.
What
And
time is their meeting? Do you guys know?
it's every 2 weeks, Thursday at 11 Central Time, which is 10 your time.
Actually,
I can do that.
actually, the role of there was a discussion on the role of documentation liaison in the documentation session, and now documentation team does not maintain documentation itself. So the documentation liaison, precisely they don't need documentation liaison now. So what we need is someone who initiates the documentation effort in individual project.
No, I agree with that. But what we are saying is that we are going to be doing our documentation distributed in every patch set. That's what we are saying. But still, I think that at least periodically we need to hear what they are planning to do in terms of processes, in terms of tools, and so it should be it's a different role in the sense that they don't document anymore, but we need to hear what they have to say. Now,
Okay.
make sense?
Right.
So is that something you would be willing to do, brother?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I found some good listening on those.
Anything else for docs?
That's it.
Can I just on that I just wanted to point out that there's a bug out there for docs that it looks like it came out of the Boston Summit where they're effectively asking for some additional documentation for simple deployments. I mean, I think they're looking for like another guide, a couple of guides. So it looks like a pretty significant slab of work, but you know, it came in from a user group, so I think it's actual requests from actual users. So I'll just throw that out there. If someone's bored, that would be a good one to pick up.
Okay.
So seemed like it was a little bit more important than average. I guess I saw Kevin even mark it as high at one point, and then he changed it. So
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think it was the operators' feedback session from the summit, and they wanted something that was just picked some plugins and didn't have any choices really. And it was like kind of here's the minimum setup just to get something working without all the choices that the current guide has, I guess.
Isn't it DevSec peaceful?
It's not a guide for regular installs.
So it's a simple deployment guide?
Yeah, let me see if I can find the.
Simple and override.
I don't know. I don't get it.
I mean, how simple can you make it? I mean, to the point that it's useless. Would they also want like a simple HA guide, simple multi-region guide?
I think it was actually Linux Bridge. They wanted a guide for Linux Bridge because they didn't like OVS.
do we think it's not important? Is that what you're kind of?
No, well, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm saying that it may end up just. It may be. It may have relative importance. Let's put it that way.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't know what value should be when you look at real life production grade deployment options that would need to be taken, and choices that would need to be taken into account when you're dealing with OpenStack. So how simple can you really make it when you're dealing with real life deployment scenarios?
I mean, they want something simple they can do in network or whatever. So, yeah, okay, I get it. Let me take a look at this one and probe around a little bit. See if
Is there a link somewhere in the set
it's bug 169.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll post it in the.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I mean, it was actually the guys from Infra that were wanting this too. They wanted like Linux bridge, one config file, provider networks, basically. So nothing, no features, just stupid, simple.
But I think we do have that somewhere in the documentation. It's one of the scenarios, isn't it? But even then, okay, that's not. What is it?
Anyways, I put the link out there on the
Yeah. Okay.
if you just
Yeah, I'll go through that. Yeah, yeah.
Poke at it later. There's also some doc bugs out there about like where the heck did they go? I was actually asking Kevin for his input on that. Expose Neutron API application as a WSGI script. So we kind of moved to this model that everyone's kind of plugged into WSGI servers like Apache or whatever.
Yeah.
Do we still need to doc that? I mean, if you go look at what other projects did, even like Keystone, Glance, whatever, they have a pretty significant piece of documentation out there on how to get.
Well, there's still a part of it that we have to finish, which is figuring out how to reference multiple configuration files when it's loaded via WSGI. So it's basically not done yet.
Okay. That I was not aware of.
Yeah.
Okay. So we will address that when it works.
Yeah.
So I think that's all we have for docs.
Do you want to just go right into Neutron lib stuff, or take a quick break, or what?
I say let's continue going, and then.
So before we do, there was someone on the IRC channel asking for remote participation. So you had something about.
I have a. We are recording right now.
Have you advertised?
No.
Oh, but I didn't sign anything, so you're not supposed to record my voice. I didn't sign any disclosure. Yeah. Shut this down. Have you sent something on the mailing list? Details?
I'll send that.
Okay.
Also, don't we be doing the thing in the IRC bot, so publishes what we're talking about, right? You got to do the thing in the IRC bot so the PTG page says so people know what we're talking about. I know we have the schedule needs or bad, but
Okay.
PTG bot.
yeah.
Let me see if I can.
I assume one of y'all's got permission.
Yeah, I think I'm supposed to. Let me see if I can tell it something.
That one we're just broadcasting to everybody what we're doing.
A little bit.
Also,
You still think, if you remember that batch we were talking about the broken links in our docs, and you're like, hey, that's great, but do you think it's worth putting time and do like a periodic job that checks those links, or is that just a quick job?
we could do one check at the end of the release. We can actually, we have a checklist documented in our repo that will remind us what, what kind of steps we need to go through at the end of the release or at the end of a milestone.
Okay.
And we've been diligent to go through that checklist and see, okay, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. We're gonna add like a reminder ourselves to say, okay, run this script before releasing to make sure that you sanitize any broken link.
Okay. And do we have a script? Because I was trying to get just the whatever the heck they call it, that plugin for Sphinx.
Yeah, Andres, he has like a crawler bot that he used.
Okay, cool.
I think he provided the pointer into that mailing thread that you started. But in theory, we could just add some notes on how to use that crawler and call it done.
Okay. Gotcha.
So yeah, let's move on to Neutron Live.
Okay. Should we start talking about the payload for the callback thing and how we want to figure out how to adopt the new payload?
Sure. So the Neutron callbacks are in Neutron Live. Everyone probably knows that. But one of the things that we did as part of that effort was to introduce a kind of new style of payload. So today the callbacks for the callback system, the callback function required is just it gets a bunch of keyword arts, arbitrary keyword arts. And we kind of wanted to make that a little bit more formalized. So we've introduced these kind of objects that you pass around that can contain the resources that are involved with the callback mechanism. Anyways, the problem is it's not really compatible with the old style. So if you change one source that's emitting a callback to say, hey, something happened, to use this and pass this new payload object rather than arbitrary keyword arguments, the consumers getting that callback will effectively break unless they can handle the new object. And so, one way to do it is obviously just to go through one by one, change each source along with its, syncs, if you will, the people receiving the events, and just marry them up. But that introduces kind of, dependencies. They obviously have to merge it at the same time or close at the same time. So there was some talk about, should we put a shim in there, or how do we handle this kind of transition to this new function signature for the callbacks? And so that's kind of the gist of the conversation is, do we need to go through the work of building a middle kind of layer so that we don't introduce these dependencies?
I mean, what are the options here? Because one option is to keep. So actually, one thing that you omitted in this is that we not only introduce the new payload, but we also introduce the new publish API.
Right. Right. So the existing kind of notify or whatever
it still
works the same way. Right. There's a new one if you want to use these new payloads like.
So yeah, I mean the payload comes with the new API.
Right. Right.
The old API has not been changed.
Yeah.
Right.
And the new API has not really changed much. It's just different. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a different signature.
Yeah.
So rather than say like we'll notify with key value X, you do publish with the object.
Exactly.
So one option is
the subscribers expecting the old stuff. How do they get the key to KWRs? Do you have some logic that unpacks stuff from the new publish API for the old subscriber?
That's the problem we're actually discussing.
Yeah, yeah. I think pretty much is going to have to do that because there's different projects all over the place that are listening for things. We'll probably need to have the payload object take a pile of KWRs that we'll leave for like a cycle or something, and then that gets pushed out to the old subscribers, and then the new subscribers just look at the payload object.
So the new I mean, I guess you can introspect the subscriber and see what the function looks, how the callback looks like.
Or just have them have new subscribers subscribe using a different subscribe function for payloads.
But that means that the payload object itself or something around it will have to know how to pack and unpack KWRs to and from object form, basically payload object form.
Yeah, I think the payload object is going to have some like legacy KWRs that it'll accept for now, and then we can get everybody moved over and then rip that out.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you could make it as sophisticated and as elaborated as you'd like to make these backward compatible. I'm not quite sure whether you really end up like addressing the pain effectively, if not by just trying to do the lockstep switch.
Yeah, switch.
I mean, again, it's not disruption free, but the way we've been handling some of those disruptive changes with the Neutron lib impact tag that would signal affected parties throughout the review process may end up leading to a much smoother migration process from the old model to the new model. And I would say to me that that is the easiest and fastest way to get from the from where we are to where we'd like to be. I'd rather not drag this for like main cycles if we can help it. I mean,
you have to do all the work done now. There's no way. There's no like half finishing it.
There is.
No,
You
on
can
a
go through a
resource basis, right?
a method at a time,
Yeah.
or a callback at a time, and address it, right? I mean, so even if you went through 5 callbacks in Queens, you didn't get the rest 20 of them, that still works. But I mean, we can try to go the way if people start bitching, then we can try something else.
I mean, actually, what we could do, I mean, we during code review we need to be diligent to ask folks to use the new model rather than keep using the old model, so that you don't end up like pushing the target further out.
Agreed.
So I don't know. Have you received any pushback that such that you were prevented from making progress?
Yeah, the patch that's actually linked there, you'll see it was like the first kind of patch to move up to the payload, and there was
Sorry for that.
Yeah, so there was some discussion in there. I mean, it wasn't major pushback, it was more just like,
what's the strategy? Right? Okay.
yeah, so.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't see this as an exceptional case compared to other disruptive changes that we've handled when we moved stuff into Neutron lib and ended up like propagating it through the various regions.
Same difference.
It's just, yeah, it's so why would we treat it differently?
The payloads can take arbitrary stuff if they need to, right?
Well, there's different payload objects kind of for the context that they're being used in. So there's like what's called a database payload object that would could encapsulate resource pre-states and then post-states. And there's like an API payload object that'll encapsulate like the method name. And so there's a couple of different flavors of payload objects that are really tailored to the space or area or kind of functionality within the code they're being used.
Okay.
And they're designed fairly generically to be able to capture that. In worst case scenario, they have this kind of arbitrary metadata dict that could be used as kind of like a staging area if something doesn't fit into that model until we can fit it in. So one way or another, it should work.
Okay. I remember there's like a few callback places where we put in like a weird keyword to indicate that it's a particular type of event or something that's doing it.
I think we've got them pretty well covered, but we can always make changes to that. Using new payload objects today.
Okay, so just rip the Band-Aid off and no backward compatibility?
Well, I would say just treat treat it as a neutral lib impact change, just the way we've been treating other changes. We'll treat this one.
And we can see how it goes. Like I said, I mean, if for some reason there's a difference, I mean, that says causing more pain than it should, then we can revisit it if necessary.
Move on then. Anybody have any callback questions?
No, I think so.
So OVO now.
So this should probably just be called database, but so the problem's pretty easy to describe. The intention of Neutron Lib, one of the intentions is to remove the dependencies that networking projects have on Neutron. So you kind of, this process of doing that requires you to look through the sub-project, look at what they're importing and using from Neutron, and decide how or if you can move that to Neutron Lib to kind of change that dependency. Well, the fact of the matter is you go through a lot of our sub-projects, they use a lot of database stuff, right? I mean, it's used in various ways, everything from utility functions to, you know, inheriting from mixins to kind of get base functionality. And if you kind of look through that, those layers, they end up getting all the way down to like the database model layer. And so the problem is, how do we break this dependency, right? How do we allow sub-projects to still do database stuff and reuse database code that's common from Neutron Lib without kind of bringing along all the models and database stuff? So that's the problem, right? The one potential solution is to kind of look at how things are moving with versioned objects and kind of notice that we're kind of moving to versioned objects as the interface to the database, and you know, perhaps extract the public interface from those versioned objects, put just the interface piece into lib. So you actually don't have a ton of implementation there. Maybe you have some generic implementation, but not directly to the models, and then kind of make them pluggable with like a backend that would be the actual implementation of the OVO at runtime. So that was one proposal. So I think the general question is, how do we break the database dependencies on these projects? That's the problem.
Right. So the proposal is to like have OVO inside of Neutron Lib and then have Neutron itself worry about injecting the database into OVO. And
well, imagine just look at OVO class right now. Go to like, you know, Neutron objects. I don't even know what's there, like subnets or something.
Yeah.
Take like the public interface, the public methods from that, and just put the method definitions as kind of like a stub or interface in Neutron Lib. And then there's a little bit of glue in Neutron Lib that allows that to be backed by an actual implementation at runtime.
Right.
So at runtime you say, oh, I want to use the subnet OVO. Is there someone to back it? You know, I know what the interface is from Neutron Lib, but I need someone to back it so I can call it in. That would bind to, you know, hypothetically.
And then each subproject will have its own implementation of that.
Why would they need that?
Because what you're saying is that you're going to take the API to Neutron Lib, right?
Right.
And then leave the actual database is working in Neutron.
Right.
So if a subproject decides that they want to use some of those objects in Neutron Lib, do they need to provide an implementation?
So I mean, if the backend code is already in Neutron, then they would just, you know, find there. If they had something project specific that doesn't belong in Neutron, they could do the same thing, extract their interface, put it in Neutron Lib, and then they would just basically publish their backing implementation at runtime to bind them up. I mean, it sounds complicated. The actual code to bind and stuff is really, really simple. I think it's just, is that the right overall approach, and how efficient is it? I know everyone's been squawking about like Steve Doré plugins and all this stuff, so I don't even know if, you know, if that would even be of interest, or, you know, how do we approach this? There's different ways to approach it, right? I mean, we could take all the database code from its own project if we wanted to, but I don't see what that means.
When we do like a Neutron release, do we put a cap on Neutron Lib?
No.
So that would be a problem with having OVO living in Neutron Lib, right? if we do like Pike release, and then we're adding new fields and stuff to Neutron lib future releases, all of a sudden those are gonna leak back to the objects that are being used by stable Pike.
Well, I mean, I think if you develop the API backwards compatibly, then it's not necessarily a problem, is it? Like if you're adding new functionality to the interface and some old, last release implementation consumer doesn't know about it, doesn't even matter if it's there or not. As long as, it's backwards compatible in nature. But I don't know, that's definitely adds some complexity to the scenario.
You had hesitation about having OVO and Neutron lib at one point, didn't you? Or am I not remembering?
Presentation? No.
Okay. So would you be okay with OVO? Does that make sense, moving OVO to Neutron?
Yeah, I think it makes sense to have like an implementation of the interface in Neutron, because you don't want to have all this tricky stuff.
Right.
So
So
we already have base classes and everything that are not really even bound to database implementation, but those are not like specific objects, just the base class. You could also have definition of the interface of the object there too.
Yeah.
And then it's somehow coupled with the DB in Neutron.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. And then we kind of push all the projects to stop referencing the database directly and just use the OVO objects.
So okay, but so if one objective is to move, base classes, base OVO classes in Neutron lib, as well as maybe actual models.
Yeah.
Like for instance, I see on one of the patches linked in the spec, you have QoS classes, binding classes in the in the Neutron lib repo. Like patch 76652. It's a POC for
Right, I'm looking.
right. So I'm thinking, okay, I can see why I would want to move base classes into Neutron lib so that other projects that may want to do DB related operations and want to do that to OVO can use those those artifacts. But why would you want to do why would you want to move actual OVO bindings like QoS or maybe something else in Neutron lib?
Well,
I mean, sure, they may be reused. They may end up being used by multiple projects except the project where that particular binding has been introduced. But to me, it sounds like leaky abstractions here. I mean, if QoS, for instance, is an API that's it's an feature that's implemented in Neutron, and I use and implement DB abstractions in Neutron, those DB abstractions should never really leave the boundaries of the Neutron project where that feature has been introduced. And maybe we want to put, I don't know, higher level interfaces in place so that you don't end up like seeing these low level data, state management artifacts leak all over the place. Making any sense?
I think
At least a little bit.
I think what consumers are really interested, if we talk about specific models, is fields definitions, so that they can refer to them, and basically they may also want to have access to the base methods like get, update, delete.
Okay,
like
but
that. But this is already provided by the interface, and they don't really need an implementation.
Right.
They just call it because they know this is an OVO object.
Correct.
With base fields. So they set fields, update, and they don't care. So yeah. So here in the patch for QoS policy, I instead see that we have some methods there that are like low level implementation, but we don't have fields definitions. Like I think it should be vice versa. You have the description of the interface of the object, which is fields, and that's all you need.
So you're saying that potentially what gets stubbed out in Neutron, that is more about the fields of the model versus the methods to interface with them? Is that what you were saying? Yeah. No?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, can I ask a quick question? Is there a Neutron API call to get usage that a user can ask, like, how many ports have I used for my quota or whatever?
Yes. What are the details?
Just merged in Bike.
Just merge and Pike. So
Yeah.
cool. So it exists, but I probably don't have it in any of my public files yet.
Right.
Neat. Awesome. Great to know. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not quite there in my head with what this would look like, given what we've just talked about, but I think I need to go back and explore a little bit.
And maybe one thing that we want to agree here, because clearly this is not going to be a 1 hour topic, is whether this is like the last like bastion to the coupling, for instance, like CoVN from Neutron or other projects along those lines, whether there are other issues maybe as big as this one that will need to be looked at, and if not, how much effort we can afford to devote in Queens, and maybe we can discuss that within this hour and double click, deep dive into this specific OVO issue offline. Assume that again, for instance, you say, okay, actually, amongst all the things that I've been looking at, that's the one that I think we should spend the most time in Queens, and you're looking for like someone who can help you with, and you can pair program with, and
Right.
take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's more about just agreeing, like, for me, about agreeing to how we want to do this database thing. I mean, it's not, I have the time to work on some code, but it's not the only hurdle left. The other major hurdle, which I'm hoping is less painful than this one, is the sharing of configuration options, which I think is going to be a simpler problem because they've already been abstracted and somewhat pulled away from the code with the refactoring we did with the ops and stuff. But that's the other major one that I saw going through OVO that we haven't addressed yet, is if trying to reference like ML2 config ops and stuff from Neutron, and how do we break that. I think the database is a bigger problem. I think it's probably the biggest one, and the most complex, and the one that we want to try to get right. In my personal opinion, I think this database, how are we going to decouple the database, how are we going to make that work, is our biggest hurdle to try to accomplish.
Is there any other one? Because one other concern I was thinking of is whether, like, the OVO code in Neutron itself is still somewhat of in flux. And
No, the base interfaces, I think they are stable for a while.
He's laughing, or at least he's
So
green.
I don't know.
It is one.
Okay.
The for a while, I misinterpreted it. Like they're only going to be stable for a while.
So, again, so
for a while.
maybe it's kind of a silly question, but are we sure that we won't end up like doing premature optimizations by looking at OVO right now, then defer it, for instance, for another milestone or two? Is there any OVO work going on in Neutron?
No, it's just at this point it's adoption, like in the plugin code, but nothing changed in the interface side. I don't expect anything huge to come up.
I'm pretty sure I've seen patches that ended up like patching something, like especially around tests, OVO tests.
I don't know what you're talking about. But you see more than me. So.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I might have been confused. Okay, but again, if that's the case, then looking at OVO may be right for maybe the right time to do that. What about testing? like all the testing framework classes.
I mean, a lot of it's tied into this really, because from what I've seen, and I haven't evaluated every single networking sub-project, but that if you can pull along, if you can find a way to decouple the database stuff, you can find a way to decouple the rest of the stuff, really. That's what I'm seeing as the biggest tie right now. The only other major tie is to the agent stuff, from my understanding, is that was getting separate. That's already out in the, what is it, OBS? What is that new? Isn't it the OBS?
DBAP.
Yeah. So that effort's still underway, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the other piece, but I think that's already taken care of as part of that. But I think the testing stuff will come along if we can figure out the database stuff. That's my impression.
Okay.
So, for the record, we are in Neutron PTG game targeting to use OVO-based RPC to Neutron and the agents. So we have a first RAF code that's being worked on, and in the process of designing this code, we run into a simple issue, which is that we have to declare mappings between resource types and OVO classes. And currently, there is no clean hook to do this in Neutron from another record. So augment this map from outside Neutron.
Would that be possible, or if we had the model fields like you mentioned a few minutes ago? Would that, I'm not familiar with the implementation piece he's talking about, but would that solve that piece? Or,
I think this is completely unrelated.
It is? It's unrelated?
Well, you just want to have a string to pass to subscribe to resources. And
yes.
So I think we already had it.
Yeah, it's not directly related to OVO, but it's related to the push-pull RPC API. In which we define mappings between resource names and OVO assets. He's built in the Neutron repo, and we need to augment this mapping for resources that are not handled by code inside Neutron repo.
That's a good point.
Because currently there's a map defined, we can augment it, but the map is used by code and it has side effects, and we don't have a clean way to augment the map and have the side effects done at the right time and so on.
So you want resource name to class mapping?
Yes, but I think mapping in the code is both ways, but yes.
Well, there's Neutron API RPC callbacks resources module, and maybe there's already what you need, because that's what we use internally in Neutron. But it may be internal stuff, and we may want to move.
So,
okay.
It was just to complete the discussion. I'd find another thing.
Oh, no, we've gotten there, but that's good.
What?
Where are we going to go from here? We propose the spec for Queens and just bring the discussion to that spec. Is that what you think?
Well, okay. It sounds to me that there is nothing else. So we want this to be the major focus of effort for Neutron Lead.
Well, I mean, who's really working on Neutron other than me? So I mean,
yeah. I mean, and
there's
any volunteer in this room would like to stand up and help out with OVO. Well, yeah, and Neutron Lead trying to decouple.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, it makes sense.
I thought the TZ was making us put everything back in the Neutron repo.
that's actually.
Don't make jokes.
You can do that, Kevin. You got time, don't you?
Wouldn't
So-
that TC discussion?
Well, they're just going to have a discussion. It's more governance. It's actually not moving repos.
I'd say, I want to review this spec. I haven't reviewed it yet. I want to review it while you're here, so that we can have a more higher bandwidth discussion as to how we get the spec in shape so that we can then execute when we're home.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I think that there's other options, so I would encourage folks to think outside the box. This isn't the only solution, so maybe there's an easier one that makes more sense for us. So let's not just think this is the only option. I'll repose it for
You could even just have like a call that you can make where you pass in like, give me OVO class for port or whatever, and then Neutron's populating all that when Neutron starts up into some interface in Neutron lib, and then none of the OVO definitions would actually live in Neutron lib, but it would at least have that interim to where they're not importing stuff directly from Neutron.
basically a simple way to deal with this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an option.
Kind of like with the plugin directory, but for OVO objects.
Yeah, that would work as well.
I don't know if that's easier.
So, excuse me, so I have some question about some relation between this net proposal and some now some very grouping and adapt also version object for DB. And so my worker can push a patch about integrating OVO with Neutron DB. So I will paste some link. Just. Is line number 89. So what is the relation between works? Should we update something, or is it okay to keep on updating these parts?
Yeah, so these patches are still needed. These are using the OVO objects inside of Neutron rather than referencing database ORM objects directly. So this is separate. They both still need to be done.
Thank you.
Okay, so you want to read that spec before we? Yeah. Okay. Do you want anything else Neutron related? Or should we talk about GovStat?
Should we do anything else on your mind?
Well, there was some other. What were the other items that OVN was importing? Wasn't there something related to agent? Something like the agent interface, or?
Yeah, but I thought that was going to be covered with removing of the agent stuff. Its own repository. I was looking at the unforeseen. So is that like IP, like external process from Agent Linux? Is that all in the new agent library?
We have an agent library?
Project?
I don't think we have an agent library.
Oh, what is that? What is that one we just talked about?
Oh, OBS DBAP. That's only for that's only for OBS communications with OBS DB.
Okay, so I mean there are some imports from, let's say, networking OVN to Neutron agent. Now I'm going to have to reevaluate those in terms of the OBS DB app.
Yeah, like IPlib, for example, we'll have to figure out if they're using IPlib. We'll have to figure out maybe that would be a good candidate to maybe go to Neutron lib. Because I think probably quite a few projects make use of IPlib for bringing interfaces up and down and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think I even had a patch for that, but I abandoned it when I heard about the OBS DB app. So I can reevaluate that in Cleansier, and if I need to, I can revise my patches that I
Okay, yeah, there's probably a few that still need to go because OBS DB app. It's not even OpenFlow. It's just OBS DB stuff, right? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the last time we talked about this was 6 months ago when we were in Austin.
Okay.
I'll take note of that, and I'll do another walk through those. The Dribble Bill stuff is moving too slow for Neutron Lib in terms of getting us over there. I mean, is there any like process-related things that people are thinking about that we should talk about here before we kind of go away from Neutron Lib? Or
Oh. Do you have any Neutron lib thoughts, Armando?
Everyone's happy. Cool.
Mhm.
That is me. I don't think I have anything else, Kevin, specifically.
Okay. So DevStack, is anybody familiar with the transition to libneutron, where that's at inside of the DevStack repo? Or are they going to deprecate the old Neutron legacy thing anytime soon? Is there a deadline we have there to switch to it?
I don't think there's deadline. I don't think anyone is actually working.
Yeah.
I had like a bunch of patches, and I think Yamamoto also had some for Midnight.
Yeah, I see. It's just
And,
merged.
like, some patches go into DevStack 8, some into DevStack, and my experience is just like takes a very long time to get anyone's attention on those. So you have like 15 patches in different places, and they're landed very slowly. Like there are conflicts. Doesn't seem like it's a priority for anyone.
Are they issues that block Neutron from adopting it, basically, for our jobs?
I think, I think we'll end it most of it. Interesting.
Okay.
I will post another one. Well, actually, those two bits from DevStack may be of importance. The root helper is not configured, and bridge mappings for agents is broken.
Okay, so there's a few
We're
related.
waiting. I don't know how to get them anywhere with that. Like the patches I pushed, they were like in the spring, and we're in the autumn right now, and they're still there.
Okay. Yamamoto, was there anything blocking? There wasn't anything blocking Midonet from adopting the libneutron and DevStack, was there? That we need to change on the Neutron side? Okay, so I guess there's not really any priority or pressure to get this done right away.
Yeah.
But maybe like if PDL talks to the right people on their side, like explain the importance of it, and they will want eventually to get rid of the old code. And
so the main issue is getting DevStack reviews.
Yeah, and that's the case. Well, this one should
I see.
be
You have
reskinned,
the
but
So this is on the DevStack side.
yes.
Yeah.
There were actually quite a lot of patches that actually landed. It's if you look at all the patches, not just open. Yeah, we had quite a lot of them. So most of them actually landed. But
Yeah, there I see. There's just a few left now that are still there.
So okay, so I'm gonna write an action item there for me. Okay.
because at this point it seems like it's just communication problem.
Okay.
One from April 19.
What about hacking checks?
Hacking checks?
Yeah.
What about them?
We ended up like having them run periodically against all Neutron Stadium projects, and we can basically apply or introduce breaking rules. And so we did complete that effort, didn't we?
We did. I mean, there's still some work to do in that space. In particular, there's some checks that are duplicated, like a Neutron lib and a Neutron, but they have different check numbers or whatever you call them. And there's some sub-projects that use Neutron's version of it and others that use Neutron Lib's version. So there's some kind of work that needs to be done to kind of integrate those. But in terms of what you're specifically talking about, I think we're good. We have a periodic job that runs that we check before we release Neutron Lib, and you know, as far as I know, we had that particular aspect of it solidified.
Okay,
and
so
I heard anyone complaining.
yeah, is there any new rule that we want to like introduce in the Neutron Lib hacking factory that's gonna end up breaking projects?
Is there any?
Yeah, I'm asking. Yeah.
No, not that I'm aware of. There was one someone tried to propose like earlier in Pike. Basically, one of the hacking checks is now up in hacking the hacking project, so we don't need to check it. We don't need to run it anymore as part of Lib, but it introduces a new check number and stuff. So there was some fallout as part of that, but that's slightly different than what you're talking about.
Okay.
No, as far as I know, there's no checks queued up that are going to break anybody right now.
Okay.
And if there is, we should see those before we release Lib by checking that periodic gate job and see any failures there and mitigate or remediate if necessary.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Should we take like a quick 10-minute break and then talk about
Yep.
common classification framework in 10 minutes and how to adopt that or not? Okay.
Zoom? Yes.
Well,
So, you know what?
I'm updating.
okay. Adopted your match basically. That looks like the right way to explain it.
Yeah, obviously you could just rip off all this code, but that's what they did in that version, because it never got right.
It's not going backwards, right? I know
I've lost any energy to fight this puzzle.
the flip side of it's pretty good. It's very cool because I have to get that with brightness in my screen's way, but it's from the side.
Yeah, I mean,
It could be worse.
as-
Than other
I would be interested in seeing the wider feedback, because again, it doesn't sound like any different from the proposal, so I don't quite see.
Lunchtime. Okay, good. I will find you at lunchtime. I basically would like to ask you to
Well, now that's what everybody.
my understanding is that you work on that, right?
I mean, to me, this whole problem could have been solved if we had simply like a space where, an official space where all drivers are.
Yeah, but that would
You're gonna work in that, right?
Why? I mean, at the end of the day, you just want to list that recognize what drivers are hosted on your
I guess my questions are not
Yeah,
about
what
new
you
things,
first,
which is the basic stuff. Okay, thanks a lot.
But that's the thing, I mean, you want to get on that line, otherwise you have to.
But that's what they want. They want to actually think that carriers
Yeah, and say, okay, you hosted on stack ministries, you work for the greater good, and you end up showing on this. Now, having to say, okay, you have to third parties. Yeah, well, at least not to start with anyway. I mean,
yeah, but I think in hindsight, it's funny. It's like if we've gone down the original, if we've gone down the path we couldn't do it originally, like department would like sort their own companies, own everybody, and then everybody come back in.
again,
Because then we could set the bar high to begin with, and then it would have been much less the problem. But that would have been unique. Okay, so
I'm still somewhat confused as to what that list is actually. They wanted that list to be, to mean, because the way projects are described is a set of folks who end up working together towards a common goal, and there's got to be some degree of cooperation and collaboration amongst the people involved. And among some of the projects that that you referred to, there is no cooperation whatsoever. So,
And then,
I mean, again, in this Zoom, for instance, you pretty much have at least each person from each of the projects that are part of the Neutron umbrella, and there are a gazillion of them that they are not even here.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, it is. I can appreciate that with such a rule, there may be some that can be perceived as treated unfairly. But I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
So I don't have a good answer. This is a perceived problem, and a problem that can be perceived more or less, worse or better by who we end up talking.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to together. So that's what they want to fix.
Yes.
Right was the register. You arrived yesterday. Yeah,
So it's pointing to the invocation to find the change the location of the fact. And then
I think I said it yesterday. Okay, this is what you're talking about. Okay. I just, but I don't know if it can be more
I basically have to try it.
I haven't put that on that
I'm not sure at all, but I just
see those, so it has lots of the unregistered device. Yeah. Yes. Yes. I think small. And then
yeah, it's a reference. I was yes, I think this is since we have the same location of the
So we have good feedback on the, on the video.
Oh yeah,
I've been asking Rilip and David and Rodolfo, and they say it's fine.
how do they speak back?
I've been pinging them in IRC.
No, but if we want to say something,
and there is
are they in contact with you? Like,
But yeah, if they wanted to say something.
Do you have the live stream going?
Yeah.
Did you can you reply in the OpenStack PTG channel to Diablo Mucho?
Of course.
With a link.
So
They just
when I do that,
let's see, Neutron
try to find
now classification. What does PTG bot do? With this
It publishes it to PTG.OpenStack.org, and you go and look on current activities, activities for servers.
So what it does?
So it puts it up on this ptg.openstack.org. So here, see, it shows Neutron common classification framework,
That's nice.
and that's after I just said Neutron now common classification.
And you do this in the
OpenStack PTG channel.
Yeah, but only certain people have rights to do it.
Yeah, I got some.
Oh, you got them.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so it's just that way at least people don't report to this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does everyone,
But
everyone
keep
in
doing
the US now get new credit cards? Because my bank because of a compromise after undisclosed merchant, or it's just me.
I think that might just be you. I haven't got it.
But
Could be related.
Yeah,
chance of fraud is fairly high. I just like how it took them a week where they're like, oh yeah, now we'll give you a credit card freeze for free. Only for 1 day. You might like, why don't you not default freeze everyone?
You want to slow down the flow of credit.
Well, at this point in time, they've worked it so badly, they should have. And then said, here's how you want to
It's irritating that it's so hard to just that you have to pay money to get it locked down to where they don't just
I think not in every state. In some states.
Yeah, you have to pay money for a service you didn't pay for it.
Yeah.
Oh, you can always close all the credit lines and
Except for in the US, your car insurance rates, your home insurance rates are also based on your credit.
Well,
but it's hard to make fraud there. Like what?
No, the issue is that people can still open a loan in your name, even if you have all your credit lines closed.
Yeah.
And then you don't find out about it until collections is attacking you for not paying your loan.
Yeah. Would be very because the premise is that if they authorize it, must be otherwise.
Yeah. Thomas, common classification framework?
Yes. Okay, so I have been volunteered by Igor to be the voice for the common classifier framework work, even though I'm not leading it. I'm only doing reviews. So I don't know exactly what to discuss. We can talk about the status of the work, and if people have questions on specific topics, we can discuss them.
Okay.
So the specs were approved weeks ago, I guess. And
half and a month and a half ago, probably. A month and a half ago, probably.
Yeah. And since there have been a few changes that have been started to for implementation, so there are a few changes. One on the DB, one on the CLI code. I think there are 3 of them. Perhaps 4. I think essentially Igor and David Shepesi are working on it. So that's for the status. We've been discussing recently on not necessarily covering in the different classification types. For the first version, at least, everything that were in the spec, were pointing at each and every possible field of each and every
protocol headers,
including things that there's probably no need for it, like IP options, which are used in the WISE. So that's the status.
So right now you're figuring out what the initial fields are to support. Are there any that are merged yet? Any protocols supported already, or is all that still under review?
All is under review.
Okay.
We need to check, but I don't think it's being merged, except for Mars 90.
Okay.
And who has review access to that? Who has access to review and merge the patches? Like you said that David and Igor works on.
Few of them, everyone has access.
No, who's a core on the
merge? Yeah. If it's just 2 people producing the code, I'm not sure how they merge it.
Let me check. I think it's Igor and David. I will check.
asking David. And,
Yeah, he's from the meeting.
he says Neutron course have access to nodes too.
But does anyone review? Like, because maybe you said that you review, but you probably don't have access to the repo. Can you merge or not? Because if not, maybe you should.
I probably can't.
Maybe you should. I don't know.
Yeah, so we probably need to add. We need to get enough people at least reviewing it, so we can have 2 people review a patch with core rights that aren't the author of that patch. I think is what you're getting at, right?
Yeah, the general idea was like we prepare the infrastructure, there is repo, we somehow validated the idea in spec, and then we offload that to the new team that will take care, like produce code, review, and then once you are happy with what you have, we may like sanity check and then think whether we want to set it in stone.
So currently the cores are David, Igor, Antoine.
Miguel?
Yeah, Miguel. Sean, Little Howard, and Shugari. So there are 6 of them. So. I don't know if there's a need for more people, but that's quite.
Plus the Neutron course. So that list plus the Neutron course.
Oh, Neutron core.
No, plus Neutron.
Yeah, yeah.
Plus Neutron.
So, I guess we have to figure out what's the initial target use case for the classifier framework. Is it going to be firewall as a service? Is it going to be try to get it inside of intertwined with security groups, or do you know what the plan is there?
It's hard for me to answer in place of the people who've been leading this.
Yeah.
My expectation that it's only mine would be that it would be based on the volunteering from the project that are identified today as good adapters, and we named a few. There are also the QS framework. There's also Tab as a service. So there's function chaining, network SSE. So we in BTP we have been following this. We have a need to bind BTP and service function chains to say that the traffic from a BTP will be drowned into a service chain. So we may have things to look at in BTP that possibly the work will have to be done in SFC. But BTP is a bit related to CCF for this particular reason. So, and you mentioned security groups. This one is less obvious to me, at least. Maybe other people have better ideas. But security groups have a long history. I think it's hard to change them, or it will mean doing a V2.
Right.
So I don't know about security groups. But,
yeah. The idea was to make firewall security group.
What?
The idea was to make a stack to invest in firewall as a service to security groups.
So is firewall as a service going to adopt the common classification framework?
We're thinking about it eventually, but
it's not
ready yet.
So I'm pinging David here, and he says that probably it's going to be firewall as a service, but we need to ask you.
Yeah, no. So we did have some conversations with David. So I think there's a patch with a reference.
So you are Sridhar?
Yep.
Yes, that's you.
Yeah.
I was going to say that somebody was supposed to be here to talk.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that David mentioned was to talk to people over here to see what is the viability of at least kicking the tires to see if we can start with it.
Yeah, it sounds like you basically need the initial user to drive the implementation, so it's not going to work if everybody's waiting for it to turn into something.
So the base code is really taking form in the form of the current gear changes in flight. So I'm pretty sure that in the following weeks there will be a possibility to make a proof of concept work, for instance, for firewall as a service if you are motivated to be a first user for CCF.
So I think at least from what looking at it is probably our full resource will get converted to being something that classifier.
Classifier UID.
Exactly. Yeah. So it seems workable, but maybe we can talk more, today tomorrow.
Yeah. That's the approaches. It's not the firewall as a service. There's only then probably some Hawaii stuff that there's a lot of
Yes, and for the API side, how the firewall service API can use to use classifiers, and also the behind the scene aspects of how it works inside the Neutron server. So I don't know how Igor and David have. I don't know what they think about that, but I expect some callbacks to be required so that the firewall service code can know about changes in the classifiers if need be.
Right now, everything is getting now firewall version 2 out, so we must be that motivated and changing our license.
But it seems to be doable. Maybe we can talk some more offline.
Yes.
At least about the potential model.
Okay.
So, but in principle, there's a willingness to.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I don't know about other projects. If people want to ask questions, I know people are involved in QoS maybe, or I know if people are working on data as a service. They could be users of this framework as well. I don't think there is anyone working on a SFC actively here in Denver.
But QoS is, David indicated that QoS is another option.
Yeah, but for QoS to be useful, I think, but we don't have anything about the classroom rules and so on. So it's for sure not for now.
It would be a piece of work to have the implementation behind.
Yes, I think.
Having like per flow different QoS limits and that kind of stuff. Is that the idea? Alright.
So another part that would be interesting to discuss about CCF. It's something that we have discussed, me, Igor, and you, Ihar, when reviewing the specs, is whether we would like to have references to, for instance, a source port or source network, or even a security group as a set of ports in the classifier to designate the traffic coming from the port, from the subnet, from the network, and so on. The discussion wasn't that obvious in terms of completing things. But we ended up not putting it in the specs. But I think it's something that we may have to revisit if we want to have one way of specifying all the traffic coming from the port, from a network across all these project that could use CCF.
Okay, so referencing like Neutron ports or something, and then having all the logic to look up the addresses that correspond to those that it.
Yes. For instance, if you want to do a tap for all the ports in the network, or if you want to map all the traffic from all the ports of the network to a service chain, then having a way to formulate this in the common classifier would certainly be useful. If you don't have this, it would be up to the project consuming CCF to combine a CCF that would not have this ability with additional field that they would have to add in their own API.
Right.
And for now, the discussion we had, I think it was in July, June, we ended up concluding that it could be done inside each project, but I don't know.
So David is saying here that Big Cafarel has said that he'll start working on a POC for SFC.
Okay.
And that he already had he also had a conversation with Dragonflow, and they are very interested also.
Okay.
can actually ask David if he sees other topics to discuss.
He wants me to be precise on the phrasing. Classifying based on neutron resources is probably the nicest way to phrase it.
Yeah. Anything else for CCF?
I'm asking David if he sees anything that we should discuss here.
Okay. Because we still have 10 more minutes.
Yeah. He says fine. So,
What are your thoughts, Armando?
so one thing that I didn't say that David has advertised the target of landing basic needs.
So, sorry, say that again?
He has claimed the target of landing basic needs.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So then, like, firewall as a service would have to depend on CCF, import it, right? Basically, to be able to use this stuff. There'd be a dependency of any projects that adopt it would have to depend on CCF.
Another question. Are you guys conditioning the horizon codes? So would the firewall's case, somebody wants to CCF, would then go to one of your horizon? Would there be a CCF horizon panel or whatever?
That's a good point, but I don't have the answer. But it's a good question. Well, it would certainly take the form whether of a panel or some piece that can be reused in each panel of each service.
That's important for me to use because I don't want the firewall that we have to our own thing and then it gets to LC. Yeah, to the CCF, and then somebody else has to make his own panel and get something shared.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think the answer is obvious because at least as it was specified, we don't have a way when you define a classifier to say a prompt for the consumption of which service it would be defined for. So
no, you need to do something. You classify from the list and maybe move on.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have the list. You need the list to be filtered to only have the classifiers that are relevant for firewall as a service. So yeah, or you would have too many classifiers, including one that cannot be used by firewall as a service, perhaps. So yeah, it needs to be done. Yeah, prefer something.
Wouldn't there be cases where you'd want a common classifier to be common?
Yes. There will be, but there will be also cases where a very specific classifier cannot be used by Project X, and you don't want to have, or you prefer not to have it appear in the UI for Project X.
I see.
So as far as how the dependency between project and CCF would be formulated, I don't actually know how that would look like. I think we don't want the implementation, for instance, for firewall service to use the Neutron API to find the content of a classifier. We would more likely reuse Neutron internals to find the objects.
I see.
So if it could be based on OVO object, for instance, it could be directly the DB model. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't have any thoughts, but there are multiple options.
Yeah, I guess OVO would probably be the best way to go. Just querying those directly.
So apparently Igor sent an email to the mailing list, a message to the mailing list, asking for feedback regarding classification types.
Okay.
I'm going to post it in the,
post that link there.
I'm asking David is if OVO objects are planned for CCF. David is saying that there is a patching flag for OVO object for CCF. I haven't.
Okay. Actually, while we're talking about library sharing things, is there anything you want to mention about OVS DBAP? Any major changes or?
Trying to avoid major changes at this point. So yeah, I mean, I plan on here very shortly releasing the 1.0. Just running into a few issues is getting networking OBN using the new OBN OBS DBApp stuff.
Okay.
But I don't think there should be anything that affects anything not accessing OBN tables. So,
oh, I see.
So I think from Neutron's perspective, it's at 1.0 essentially.
Okay.
Have you replaced consumer usage of the stuff that has been moved, or is that not something you're doing as part of government? Like if some project used this thing, is it gone from Neutron, or do they stop there?
I left the stub there, so people can get to it through like a deprecated move kind of thing. But,
remove it.
yeah, you can. Yeah, this cycle you should be able to remove it.
You should be.
Because it was deprecated last cycle, so the stub was deprecated. So.
And then like the other projects that would have been using that, say networking or whatever, did you update their references to use?
Some of them I have, and I haven't looked at all. Like L2 Gateway is using it. I haven't checked specifically to see if they're updated or not, but Dragonflow is definitely using it directly now. So I think most of them are taken care of at this point, but I need to go through code search and see if anyone's straggling, but it's easy. I mean, it's very easy to change the imports.
Would you mind if I just ask a general question about CCF? Would these classifiers be something that could be pushed down into hardware for acceleration, similar to Linux TC?
So the scope is much more high level currently. So this question is not in the scope, but nothing prevents this from being done. The CCN framework is pretty extensible, so that we can add in the future different classification types for different protocols. So depending on what hardware you would like to map it on, you might have things that you couldn't map, possibly. So that the question of what you can accelerate in hardware, what you can translate into hardware acceleration would be on a case-by-case basis, depending on the. But nothing undoable. I mean, the framework doesn't prevent this from being done.
Okay. Yeah, my organization, we develop SmartNext, so that's the biggest use case for us would be trying to maybe modify the classifier semantics so that it's acceleratable and then push it down into the hardware, something like that. One of the problems is stateful firewall is quite demanding in terms of reclassification. So that reduces the throughput for the acceleration quite dramatically. So what we do is we try to simplify the routes so that they are sort of one shot instead of having to reclassify the traffic after reaching certain points in the graph. Because the kinds of things that we would be looking to. I've imagined it be on a per classifier basis that you want to do that.
Yeah, the framework is really extensive. So you can combine different rules. So I would expect some combination to not be implementable in hardware. So your translator would have to be able to say yes or no. I can accelerate or I cannot accelerate the specifier. So, but it's already true for the project consuming CCI. We already identified that for some of the projects, some people couldn't make sense.
Yeah, CCF was mainly just concerned with unifying the way users express like a match on a flow, right? Effectively, it's not really specific to what the action is that happens with that. That depends on the project that's consuming CCF, like firewall as a service or quality of service or whatever. So that it's going to be the combination of the two that will decide whether if you can accelerate this in hardware or not.
Yeah, but when you define, for instance, in type of the service, you say use base classifier, then the type of the service will have to validate that it can use this classifier, and it may say no. The question of hardware translation introduced another question, that if you have a heterogeneity in the compute node that you have, some of them are trying to do acceleration, some of them are not. And in this case, it's pretty complex to handle because the framework would have to say, well, if you say yes, and it doesn't work on all the compute nodes, then something would just break. If he says no, why it would work on some of the compute nodes, then it's kind of a pity as well. So the way the consuming projects, the way the consumer projects that consume CCF classifiers handle this kind of error conditions is will be up to each project to define, but it's not a trivial question.
So it would be more related to the consumer whether or not the people learn it or not.
All right. Should we talk about the CLI? What to do with it?
Yeah. Thank you, Thomas.
Thanks. So we should probably start with. So we need to deprecate the Neutron CLI, or when to drop it. There's a gap, and you brought it up. Yeah. Well, how has anybody talked to? Has anything come back from OSC about what we can do for the resource extensions, resource attribute extensions?
Now, OpenStack SDK defines the whole attribute in the code. So, so there is no extension kind of code and scale. So yeah, I have no good idea on that. And see, outside it is most I think the best way is to define a whole API in the upstream. This is the best approach. The same suggestion in the mailing list.
Okay.
So what I got out of that, Kevin, if you look through that thread that's been there, is like, long story short, that the group that was kind of working on OSC has become pretty sparse, and so there's new ownership. There's basically that plumbing is changing hands to a different group. And after I complained or talked on the email list, they basically agreed that, you know, the gap that I suggested is a gap, and they will consume it. Now, it's my understanding as part of OSC kind of changing hands in terms of teams or ownership, they're going to do some rework of the plumbing actual API because there's some known issues with it. I mean, not that it's not good or anything, it's just perhaps not as robust as it could be to make it easy for people to consume it. And so after the email thread I got out of it, they would make it pluggable to handle our use case. So when is that going to happen? I mean, I'm hoping this, in the Queen's time frame, but I haven't been able to touch base with those guys yet.
Okay. So then, I guess while we're waiting to figure that out, we probably just have to keep the Neutron client alive.
I mean, here's how it's working for us. I mean, people run it, they see the deprecated, and they're like, oh, well, what's coming? And we tell them, and they're like, oh, is it going to handle all these Squirrel extensions that you guys have? Because, PMR has quite a few of these, and they provide value for our customers.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, and then they're like, oh, why is it going away? So that they're actually kind of scared because we don't have a story. So
maybe we can print out like a curl command that they use to.
Yeah, get rid on that.
Yeah, I mean, I was suggesting to at this point rephrase the deprecation message rather than remove it, because removing the deprecation message would give the wrong impression that
we're going to keep it forever.
We're going to keep it forever. It's ideally, we'll end up having a unified client. Now, if there are blockers towards that end goal, let's go to address the blockers.
So the deprecation message will say, don't worry, VMware customers at the end or something.
Yeah,
I'll look at rewording that.
Another approach is to provide OSC plugin for your feature. But, I think that you're talking about the attribute.
Yeah.
So some attribute on the port or something. So it's a duplicate effort, but it is a possible approach.
I mean, the problem is even that we have our own plugins for where we have our own resources, but this is a special case where we extend existing Neutron resources with new attributes. And really the only way to do that now is to go right into OSC and add a new attribute that it can pick up and understands, and then you got to put in the output. And then even the Neutron client or the OSC for Neutron doesn't necessarily support extensibility. We basically have to duplicate the code that you've done there. So it can be done. It ends up with a bunch of duplicated code that's messy.
Okay, so that's what you're saying is just duplicate the existing Neutron plugin.
For example, what I'm suggesting is if we want add some attribute for ports,
yeah,
you can implement some command for add something to port command or some.
Oh, through a separate command?
Separate command.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, it's doable. Like, I mean, we actually do it now, but literally we've duplicated a couple hundred lines of code, and that is really messy because if the original code changes, we got to sync it all up, and we don't pick it up. I mean, it's possible, but it's not pretty or clean or anything I want to put my name on.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's a good idea.
I mean, I plan to keep bugging the guys that are kind of working on the plumbing, like the SDK and stuff, and make sure that they account for our use case. And I think once that they rework the plumbing so that it can account for it, I mean, we'll be fine. We just need to implement a few things, and we'll be fine. We just don't really have the facilities to do it anyway right now.
I see.
But it's not a philosophical discussion. It's a discussion of resources and time with the client, the OCS.
Yeah, what was the outcome of the mail thread that it's okay to do this? Because there was some pushback on, extensions are terrible.
So it is a issue on SDK side, really. So there are several Python SDK, OpenStack-SDK, Neutron Python by client, Python binding or shade. if Neutron client Python binding is something special, I don't think it is a way we go. I haven't checked how what kind of middle shade has.
Yeah, I'm not sure how shade works.
It is used in the input cloud.
So we want to reword the deprecation warning on the client then?
I mean, how would we vote?
What does it say right now? That you'll die if you use this?
No, I just removed it.
Remove.
The current proposal was to drop the message, the warning message.
What does the warning message say?
The bind is deprecated.
Okay, it doesn't say that it's going away right away.
Yeah, it says that it's going to be deprecated in the future. That's what it says.
I think we can make it conditional. I think that, for example, we did Neutron load balancer service V1 or something, there is no alternative for now. That we are just waiting for them. So the some now deprecation warning is always displayed, but
that'd be a lot of work, won't it? To you have to go through and then put it on every command. Which one?
But then you will have an actual list of the gaps. Like,
that's true.
Maintained in the repo.
I mean, we can leave it, as long as we kind of have agreement that we're not going to throw it away.
Yeah, I don't think we're not going to get rid of the client until we have some answer here.
Well, I think that's enough. We can enough for us.
Okay.
For now. I'm really hoping that we can make some progress on this in Queens. My plan was to sync back up with the guys in the mailing list after this week, because I think they're having a lot of discussions about it, and they didn't really have any answers for me a month ago. But
okay.
Hopefully they do in a week.
Like action item.
So the action item here is just Bowden follows up on email thread.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm not the doctor.
Yeah. Well, now what do we talk about?
So it's
next topic. I have one load balancer stuff. There is no answer. I think we can answer now, but I think it is better to discuss with Octavia when how.
So, you want to drop the LBAS V1 code?
When we should drop load balancer stuff of V1, and there is no OSC compatibility, OSC parity now. The Octavia team is now implementing the Octavia OSC plugin, but they don't think implement load balancer Neutron load balancer bits for OSC. OSC plugin for.
Okay, so for OSC they just want everybody to use Octavia.
So I think I can go to the Octavia room and discuss something.
Okay. And what about the other advanced services like firewall or VPN? They just need to write an OSC plugin, right?
I think that yeah, they have good progress, and I think the VPN is just waiting the decision on the inclusion.
Okay. Oh yeah, I remember seeing that review now in the Python Neutron client repo, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If it takes some time, if it takes some time for the decision, we can suggest to implement their OS library in their own repo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think it should take too long because it's close now, isn't it?
Yeah, also only broker is Earth agent extension.
And they already have a patch up for that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in pipe cycle we track the progress in the Neutron meeting. So I think it is better to keep client section, client topic in the meeting, but main topic should be focus on advanced service.
Okay. So focus on the advanced services in the meetings now for CLA. Okay.
So let's take a break.
Take a break. Just early lunch.
It's good.
What time is lunch?
I don't think
So
it's
it's 12 to 1 and then
Yeah, when do we start the afternoon session too?
Did we chop an hour off of this? Is there supposed to be a 1 to 2?
We probably did, yeah.
you just finish up the topics and take that.
Okay. You want to go to the retrospective now?
Now? No. Yeah, we better not push it all the way to before lunch. Because people wanted to come to talk about that. That's 3 hour difference.
Yeah, okay.
Do we want to start the Pike retrospective at 1 though?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Let me just change this here. 1 to 3. Okay. Okay, so I'll just say lunchtime now, and then meet back here at 1 for the Pike retrospective. Okay.
Now I'm going to stop the recording and announce in the channel that we're stopping and resuming that.
Okay.
So
currently, we are discussing this.
Okay.
I just noticed.
That's okay. Regarding firewall analysis B1 command, so I will discuss this regarding a channel. Today's meeting for Friday's individual meeting about duplication.
Yeah.
B1 cycle and the B1 command.
Okay. Yeah.
So I will show them.
So Redip is working on Tap as a service. He says that they have a CLI implementation in both the home grip and Neutron client. And the question is, do both of them need to continue, or should Prex trying to get into the stadium submit a patch only on a single repo? He's in the channel, actually.
So well, if they're already in the state, so they can't land anything in Neutron client unless they're in the stadium. So I think they should probably just do it in their own repo until they get merged into the stadium. Otherwise, they'll end up blocking like VPN servers. They can just always move it later. I don't think that causes any problems.
Not that I use it as an vaccine, how this setting to come. My movements with the house, that was my own, like, that one, it sounds outrageous. But
Yeah, well, it's down the street from the Apple. Yeah, that neighborhood's going to change rapidly.
Oh, yeah.
It said that that wasn't even the only offer that exceeded the fairness. All of them were obscene overpayments to attempt to get that house.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is they also priced it slightly under market to get people bidding, and then just got people wrapped in the emotion they didn't want to lose.
Even though, I mean, I you know, I guess like good time even into the you know, they never actually slow down, but when I am cool off to I mean the final sales by and all these slightly over yeah, again at time for 9 there's a rule. Again, I mean, yeah. It's outrageous. It's probably like 1,000 square feet down.
Yeah, I think
It has a big yard on the side.
it has a big. I don't know. I used to. So when I was young, they used to put me in a hotel down the street. I used to run through this neighborhood.